the military parade this morning. Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile is here together with the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Romeo Espino. We now see the motorcade bearing the first couple, His Excellency President Marcos and the First Lady, to attend this morning's military parade. The welcome honors to be accorded to the President and the First Lady and the other guests of honors. On hand are the chiefs of the four major services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. His Excellency President Marcos has just alighted from the presidential limousine and is given a warm applause here by the audience, which has gathered in order to attend this morning's military parade and later on the commencement exercises. In a short while, we will be viewing the military parade and welcome honors to be accorded to the President by the entire corps of cadets of the Philippine Military Academy. The President has been joined and informed here by the Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy. The Philippine National Anthem and the gun salute signaling the start of the military honors and parade to start the commencement exercises in today's occasion here at the Borromeo Field in the Philippine Military Academy, Fort Del Pilar. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency President Ferdinand Marcos, accompanied by General Angel Canapi, Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, and the battalion commander, now begin trooping the lines. Covering this affair with us this morning is my friend and colleague, Mr. Joe Sobrino. Joe?
Thank you very much, Dada. I must add, Dada, that this is one tradition that has never lost its particular attraction, not only to the people of Baguio and visitors, but even to the cadets themselves. I must say that I have watched this routine a couple of times before, and I always find something special in it. Each time the President troops the line, you remember the days when you were in high school when you took up PMT, and it's, of course, there's a lot of difference between that experience and this one, but it sort of makes you proud to see cadets like this. This is the composite battalion composed of two companies to honor the President this morning, as well as the Defense Minister. Let me say, Dada, that the Philippine Military Academy has a very long tradition. It has produced some of the best officers we ever had in this country, and most of them occupy positions in the government. Most of them, a couple of them even, have become heroes. The Philippine Military Academy is under the direct supervision and general direction of the Defense Ministry, and it is the Minister of National Defense who designates the Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff, who then has direct supervision over the military matters or matters pertaining to the Academy. President Marcos now on his way to the stand. Dada, you can have a better view from that side.
Yes, Joe, thank you. President Marcos, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, has just completed trooping the line here at Borromeo Field. This is a composite battalion made up of two companies, the Foxtrot and Gulf Company. The President was accompanied there by the Superintendent of the PMA, General Angel Canapi.
Let me just mention in passing data that the President arrived at about 8:20 this morning at Wakhan Airport. And right at the airport, he was met by a group of local officials. In fact, Minister Aspiras of Tourism was there. That was the arrival honors for the President. He now walks with General Canapi, PMA Superintendent and Defense Minister in Greeley, General Espino, and some of the other top brass of the Philippine Armed Forces.
Joe, I'd like to make mention here of the fact that the President has made it his commitment to be present at the graduation of the Philippine Military Academy every year since he first became President in 1965. And the first graduation that he attended was in 1966. So for 15 continuous years, the President, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, has seen to it that he would be here to address the graduating class of the Philippine Military Academy. Indeed, this is a very memorable occasion for all of those graduating here. It is always something to look back to for the graduates of the Philippine Military Academy who, after about 4 years of training, are brought to their respective fields, and all of them, of course, excel in the fields that they are put into. I think, Joe, you have a better view there. This is the formal opening of the new grandstand here at Fort Borromeo.
That's right, Dada. The President, assisted by the wife of the PMA Superintendent, and some... I couldn't...
Well, those with the President opening,
anyway.
Formally opening the grandstand would be the chiefs of the four major services, of course, headed...
Monsignor Gaviola is blessing the entrance to the new grandstand. This is one of the few new structures that I've seen in recent years, Dada.
Yes, over the past year, there have been some striking changes here at the Fort del Pilar, the Philippine Military Academy here in Baguio City, and among them is this grandstand. And, well, at the moment, there's a little commotion there as some coins are thrown, of course, again, symbolic of the formal opening of this new grandstand.
President Marcos tossing coins into the crowd.
Well, the people with the President...
They really did a good job sprucing up the Philippine Military Academy, Dada.
And you would notice, too, that there's a Filipino touch to the grandstand here, very demonstrative of the Filipino character that is already seen in many of the architectures seen hereabouts. And the grandstand also is one of this manifestation. What would be ensuing after the formal opening of the grandstand would be the parade to be participated in by the entire Corps of Cadets of the Philippine Military Academy. Joe?
If you look at around the Philippine Military Academy today, you wouldn't believe that this school, this premier military school in the country, actually started as a very small training school sometime in 1905, Dada. We are told that the Philippine Military Academy, with a few cadets under its roof, started in an old barracks in Santa Lucia, that's in the walled city of Intramuros, sometime in 1905. That's about 7 to 6 years ago. And from there, it grew into what was then known as the Philippine Constabulary School. In other words, the Philippine Military Academy was born out or was carved out of the shambles of the Filipino-American War. At that time, there was need for trained officers, not only for combat, but for law enforcement and administrative duties. That's how the school, the PMA, started. And then it was moved to Baguio from Intramuros. It was at first located at the Camp Henry T. Allen area, right above, just beside City Hall now, before moving to this site in Fort del Pilar, named after Gregorio del Pilar, the hero of Kirit Pass. Dada, what can you see over there?
Well, at the moment, the president is seated right in front here at the grandstand, and beside him are, the Minister of National Defense, Minister Juan Ponce Enrile, and the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Romeo Espino, and the Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, Brigadier General Angel Canaki. Well, apparently they are awaiting the start of the parade, which is one of the high points in this morning's event. Well, Joe just gave you a brief history of the Philippine Military Academy, and from then it has truly grown to become the foremost military institution of training here in the country, and not only in the country, but in the Far East. We'd like to take note of the fact that for this year, the 1981 batch of graduates, there are 3 foreign cadets who will also be graduating, and 2 of them are finishing at the top of their class.
Sound attention call. For the members of the graduating class, there could not be a more nostalgic nor more exhilarating sound, for it signals the beginning of the last time they will parade as members of the Cadet Corps Armed Forces of the Philippines.
We can mention here, Dada, that this is the biggest graduating class ever, since the first graduates of the Academy that was in 1905 or 1906.
Like you mentioned earlier, Joe, the graduation ceremony here at Borromeo Field is always a touching experience, and
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the graduation parade of the Philippine Military Academy class of 1981. Our special guest for this morning's ride is the President of the Republic of the Philippines, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand Adelin Marquez. We would like to thank the President for the singular honor he affords this institution by gracing the graduation rites year after year. Our Academy, therefore, and most especially the graduating class, there should be a more inspiring gesture.
Joe, to the right of the grandstand, we now see the Corps of Cadets marching down and approaching the field.
Looking at these young men standing so upright, marching so well, and looking so hopeful, one has to keep his fingers crossed that as they don the officers' uniforms and embark on their careers, they will keep their idealism, and despite the odds, which at some point in their career they will inevitably be faced with, they will hold on to their dreams.
I understand there will be about 800 of these cadets.
Coming from different walks of life, they came to the Academy one April morning, 4 long years ago, armed only with dreams and determination. They were then a disunited and discordant group bound only for a common aspiration, to become a cadet. The rigors of league year proved to be revealing. It separated the men from the boys, so to speak, the faint-hearted from the determined. League year was literally a survival of the fittest, but even the most determined had their moments of wavering, especially when they could not reconcile some ego-breaking traditions of the Corps with the reasons for their being in the institution. In retrospect, however, they realized that such practices were all part of a grand plan to shape up men who know the meaning of humility and obedience. For unless they could learn how to temper their stubborn pride, they would never be able to fully comprehend the essence of true leadership, what authority entails, and what duty means. Through those times when their resolve seemed to be wavering, one comforting thought which buoyed up their morale to no end was that others before them lived through the same experience. And the fact that they were able to emerge from it unscathed showed that the challenge was insurmountable. All one has to have is the willpower to rise to the occasion and to judge what there exists a rationale for this thing. In the midst of all the demands of the first year, their thoughts could never be further than the next day. They lived by the day. Graduation was the remotest thing in their minds. The yearling years saw them regaining much of their pride. Efforts were then concentrated not so much on keeping their respective as it was on learning the value of self-discipline. For they soon realized that this self-discipline is their only ally in their struggle to keep their hands above water in their academics. With the coming of the Tau year, they had completely attuned themselves to the life of the academy. With their assumption of a wider range of duties and responsibilities in the course and the widening of their authority base, things were easing out little by little. They were beginning to feel and to be treated like the officers they would be in 2 years. The dream of graduation was no longer presumptuous. It was definitely insinuating itself. And finally, they were first-class men. They were now in complete control of the course, with a range of responsibilities having been turned over in February 1980. Their goal was well within reach. 13 months later, that long-awaited day when they would put on their cadet uniform for the last time and would answer to the band sound of attention calls finally came. And now, at this point, as we watch them parading before the grandstand, we are witnessing the forging of a dream, a vision into reality.
Joe, that was a breathtaking view that was given to us as the troops marched down towards the Borromeo Field, set against the beautiful background of this mountain.
Now formed for the celebration parade of the class of 1981. As soon as the battalions are ordered, the regimental commander designates Alpha Company as the base company.
Here we have a view of the entire cadet corps of the Philippine Military Academy.
All 850 of them, Joe, made up of the freshmen, the plebeians, the yearlings, the sophomores,
And
the first-classers, and the graduating class.
Yeah.
Graduation to the PMA cadet is really a memorable event. It is an event of success, notably with a sense of pride, distinction, and honor.
The regimental adjutant centered himself midway between the line of troops and the troop commander.
Today is the climax of what is known as March Week at the PMA data.
That's right, and they have quite a number of activities lined up for the entire week. We did also witness at the start of the week the fellowship luncheon that was attended by His Excellency the President Ferdinand Marcos. And he had the opportunity to talk to the alumni of the Philippine Military Academy. Last night, the graduation ball was also held. And later on, after this parade, the commencement exercises will be held at the Baguio Convention Center.
That's about a 20-minute drive from Fort del Pilar, the Baguio Convention Center located near the UP campus. near the tourism building there, the Supreme Court compound.
All other companies now align with Alpha Company. After having the court rest, the regimental adjutants direct the company guides to take their post on line with the troops.
This, Joe, would just be one of the manifestation of the very rigid training that these Philippine Military Academy cadets undergo during the 4 years that they stay here at Fort Del Pilar. And every PMA is a firm and resolute guardian of peace and progress later on in guarding the democracy in this country as they join the armed forces of the Philippines.
The discipline you speak about, Dada, is brought about by what you call the honor code system that is practiced at the Philippine Military Academy. This is the only school that applies such a code. Every cadet, from the plebe to the first class men, are required to tell the truth at all times. Truth is the underlying principle of that honor code system.
A high point in...
The regimental commander will give a series of manual of arms to test the proficiency of the corps.
This is the traditional manual of arms.
One of the high points, Joe, of this exercise here would be the turnover of, well, the sort of rule of the Philippine Military Academy from the senior class, the first class cadets, to the juniors who will later on become the first class cadets. And the graduating class, then the members of this class would be commissioned as second lieutenants and as ensigns in the armed forces of the Philippines.
Yes, this is one of the cycles in this tradition of the Philippine Military Academy, the turnover. A well-executed drill. Well, the applause speaks for itself. Well, it is no wonder that many young Filipinos want to enter the Philippine Military Academy.
That was a very impressive and awe-inspiring exercise, and as reflected by the response of the audience here, this truly is a manifestation of the beautiful, the very rigid training that the Philippine Military Academy cadets undergo during the 4 years that they are here. But there is really more to it, Joe, than meets the eye.
Yes.
Because after this graduation, well, he virtually becomes the standard bearer of that symbolic conscience of the armed forces of the Philippines and of the Republic, and on his shoulders now rests the responsibility of protecting national integrity.
To the President.
As the saying goes, Dada, graduation is not an end. It's only the beginning of more difficult tasks for them. In a few minutes, Dada will be witnessing a parade by the Cadet Corps at the Philippine Military Academy. The weather has been very good.
And this, of course, is a weather that's been very conducive to the training that these cadets undergo during their stay here. And it has also become the foremost military institution in the Far East, so we do see some foreign cadets also coming over here for training.
A few years back, that just for the record, we had an American cadet who graduated from the Philippine Military Academy. And
His
this year,
Excellency President Marcos now steps down from the grandstand as he approaches the jeep in which he is going to ride again to troop the parade here. He has been joined by the Superintendent of the PMA, Brigadier General Angel Canapi. The President goes on to again salute the commander of the battalion, and he himself joins the President and General Canapi to troop the lines once again.
how many times the President has gone through these routines that I couldn't recall, but it must have been plenty.
But to the President himself, Joe, it's also a very meaningful experience. The President being a soldier himself, he understands and he deeply realizes the significance of the role that the military plays in nation building. He, having been a veteran of the Second World War, as a hero, as a matter of fact, of death and past. And so the military has always been very close to his heart, and because of that, he has made it his commitment to be coming here to the Philippine Military Academy to attend the commencement exercises.
This is a tradition that every president of this country has to keep. Every March of each year, he comes over to face and talk to the graduates, to the students, the other cadets of the academy.
Mutual understanding between the Commander-in-Chief and the Cadet Corps, that utmost observance of discipline and respect shall prevail. As the cadets look at the honorees as a gesture of homage and loyalty, the President acknowledges the manifestation with a silent approval.
Weapon carrying the President now is passing the front of the gym. This is where the cadets do their exercises. Incidentally, the Philippine Military Academy does not only offer military sciences or academic subjects, they also have a very good physical education program that explains the presence of so many gyms here, structures that offer facilities for building the body, and the mind, of course.
Joe, by this very action of the President again trooping the line, he formally welcomes the graduates of the PMA to the armed of the Philippines, and this is quite a tall order that is given to the cadets, quite a responsibility that is placed on his shoulders, the responsibility of protecting national integrity. As products of this institution, these men stand vigilant as the country's pride in the task of nation building. As you very well know, these cadets were trained both in the art of warfare and in the art of molding the nation in relevance to today's needs and the aspirations of the Filipino people. To them, whom these cadets are indebted, service is accorded in the highest tradition of discipline and leadership. The PMA is recognized as the product of the finest tradition of leadership that Filipinos take pride in. The soldier becomes a link and the ambassador of goodwill between the government and the people. And that was the very significance of the President trooping the line once again to formally accept them as ambassadors of goodwill between the government and the people of the Republic of the Philippines. After having trooped the line, His Excellency once again alights, he alights from the jeepney and again goes up to the grandstand to view the rest of this morning's ceremony. Joe?
Rather, let me mention of the 161 graduating cadets today, 33 of them will be joining the Philippine Navy, and about 29 will be joining the Philippine Air Force. As you mentioned earlier, out of 3 are foreigners. They happen to be at the top of the class, at least 2 of them. One is the top-notch.
Joe, and he's going to receive the presidential saber from President Marcos.
The other is from Singapore.
That's right. He's the salutatorian of the class, another foreigner. That's Cadet Chung Yu Chi of Singapore. The valedictorian of the class will receive the presidential saber from the president. And then he will also receive 3 other awards in mathematics, in physical sciences, and in engineering. Joe, I recall in a conversation earlier, you did mention that a lot of attention is also given to mathematics and engineering in the courses offered here for the cadets at the Philippine Military Academy.
And looking at the subjects, the line of those subjects, it's formidable. It requires, I think, more than an average intelligence to be able to finish a 4-year course at the Philippine Military Academy. But that's a well-known fact. That should recall your high school days, Dada.
Of the Cadet Corps Armed Forces of the Philippines, Ground Corps.
You remember
The chain of command of the Corps is a
that time in high school when you hear that music?
Yes, Joe, graduation is always a very touching and meaningful occasion. Like you said earlier, it is just the beginning and not the end in itself.
How true.
Ceremony represents an end and a beginning.
That's a strain that some cadets wouldn't want to hear.
This ceremony signals the end of their cadet life and 4 long years of rigorous training. It also signals for the graduating cadets the beginning of their career as officers in the armed forces of the Philippines and a life of service to the country and its people.
I'd like to know, Joe, what these senior cadets are feeling at this very moment. It's actually a mixed feeling of joy and of sadness as they turn over their arms to the incoming senior cadets for 1981. Of course, there's a feeling of joy as they brave the world that they've been training for these past 4 years, but still there is also that feeling of sadness as they leave behind the walls of the Philippine Military Academy, the joys that all of these cadets shared through the years that they were in training. There were, of course, difficult times, but of course, after the difficulty comes the glory. And that will always be something to look back to, and it will also be an inspiration for them in their future endeavors. the Philippine Military Academy from the seniors on to the juniors. The Corps of Cadets now moves forward. And of course, again, there's a very warm and pleasant round of applause from the audience. What the senior cadets just turned over to the juniors was the saber, symbolic of the transfer of leadership of the institution here in Baguio. And that, yes, Joe, that would also be signaling the turnover of responsibility.
This is the graduating class. Dada?
Yes, and of course they're undergoing a very touching experience because they realize that this is just the beginning and not the end in itself. It signals the start of a new undertaking. The task that lies ahead is delicate, a mission that still awaits fulfillment. But considering the training that they have undergone for the past 4 years, of course, they're ready to meet any obstacle and come out of it with victory.
Let us not forget, Dada, the Philippine Armed Forces today is very different from what it used to be. Not only are the men, officers and men trained for combat, but today they have branched out into civic action, such as helping in infrastructure building, for instance, or participating in rescue operations.
The honor to present to you the class of 1981, 161 strong.
The 161 graduates of 1981 of the Philippine Military Academy, presented to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines himself, His Excellency President Ferdinand Edwin Marcos. These 161 candidates for graduation, of course, are filled with a new pride as they enter another door, as they go through another stage in their path of life. They have been under a 4-year program of training.
The 161 members strong class has formed into mass formation and will pass in review before the Commander-in-Chief and you, our honored ocean. The class of 1981 entered the Philippine Military Academy on 1 April 1977, numbering 240 strong. Their class underwent the rigorous demands of the fourth-class system, and many who could not cope dropped by the wayside. The rest came through with guts and determination to complete the first year of training. By their second year, the yearly year, the class had been reduced to 181. The high point of this second year for the class was the visit to the ASEAN member nations on an official tour. It was a tour that will never be forgotten by the members of the class. The advent of the second year found the class of 1981 with 162 members. This was the year during which the members of the class assumed formal roles of responsibility in the Corps. In particular, as second-class men or scouts carried out their tasks in an admirable manner, and today they pass in review before the President to exhibit fidelity and loyalty to him as they prepare to pass out to the portals of the Academy into their chosen profession, the profession of arms. Mr. President, the Academy presents to you 161 strong hearts who have dedicated themselves to serve our great nation and you, our Commander-in-Chief. This is the last time for them to pass in review as cadets.
Joe, it really doesn't sound very pleasant when you hear that out of 240 cadets that started out in 1977, only 160 remained But of course, this just goes to show the rigidity of the training that they've undergone. And this is also a manifestation of knowing the men from the boys. And these are the men that have been left behind from the 240 that started out in 1977. They've undergone a 4-year program of training with a stated mission to instruct, train, and develop the cadets so that they shall possess the character to broaden basic military skills and education essential to the successful pursuit of a progressive military career. And as the members of the graduating class pass before the president, we can see on his face the look of pride in these people, these men who have proved themselves worthy of what they are to receive now. Joe?
You put it so well, Dada. The long gray line. At about 11 o'clock this morning, these cadets will be receiving their diplomas from the president, or shall we say commissions. There will be second lieutenants before the day is out. As I mentioned earlier, about 30 of them will be joining the Philippine Air Force. About an equal number will be joining the Philippine Navy. And I'm quite sure that the 3 foreigners who will be in the graduating class will be joining their own, the various services of their armed forces. Neom of Thailand, Baha of Malaysia, and with the Chewy Beat of Singapore.
And we hope, too, Joe, that they shall also be the pride of their country when they return there after having been through the training here at what is acknowledged as the foremost military academy, not only in the country, not only in the Philippines, but also in the Far East. The ceremony this morning has been replete with so many symbolic gestures. One would look at military people as expressionless, Joe, but with the very wordings of the annotation of the announcer here, we just can see how sensitive military people are to.
Not be marching in the Corps. They have passed the reins of power within the Corps to the class of 1982, and they now stand to review their soon-to-be underclassmen. Today marks their last day as cadets. By this afternoon, there will be officers dedicated to serving the nation. And as they stand in formation for the last time as cadets on this field today, they silently bestow upon the Corps, marching in review, the message, carry on.
It's not a very easy task that has been laid on the shoulders of these men as they are beckoned to carry on and continue to become the guardians of national integrity and security of the country. They will carry on and lift the true spirits of the Filipinos and the greatest traditions of the Philippine Military Academy. After all, the Academy has prepared these selected young men for a lifetime of service to their country and people as career officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And inasmuch as it is the country's only institution of higher learning with this specific mission, its philosophy of education is indeed unique. And as a show of real honor and appreciation to these members of the graduating class, the lower classmen march in front of the seniors.
The PMA band under the baton of Technical Sergeant Geronimo Garcia.
Dada, you start out as a
First Battalion, Iloilo, East Staff, Isidore Suerte, Cavite, Cesar Takal, Cavite, Antonio Ayala, Laguna, Vic Loob, Metro Manila, Alpha Company Commander, Vicente Yordan, Mandaue City, East Staff, Manuel Asitorena, Dipolog City, Ignacio Cruz, Metro Manila, Nestor Pinto, Metro Manila, First Platoon Leader, Armando Remolete, Baguio City, Second Platoon Leader, Samuel Benigorsa, Quezon City. Bravo Company Commander, Vito Madarang, La Union. His staff, Benji Magalan, Baguio City. Willie Franco, Cagayan. James Melas, Baguio City. First Platoon Leader, Cesar Tagulao, Cabanatuan City. Second Platoon Leader, Noel Vargas, Pampanga. Second Battalion Commander, Edgar Ladao, Mindoro. His staff, Narciso de la Cruz, Pasay City. Alex Membrano, Quezon City. Danilo Biones, Bulacan. Tenario Carinal, Laguna. Charlie Company Commander, Rodrigo de Gracia, Cagayan. His staff, Danilo Escopia, Metro Manila. Ricardo Marquez, Cavite. Alan Fortes, La Union. First Platoon Leader, Noel Patugalan, Metro Manila. Second Platoon Leader, Anthony de Guzman, Pangasinan. Delta Company Commander, William Harris, Metro Manila. His staff, Tito Trinidad, Iriga City. Ernest Benitez, Ilocos Sur. Alex Sugay, Nueva Ecija. First Platoon Leader, Jesus Milan, Metro Manila. Second Platoon Leader, Reynaldo Corpus, Pangasinan. Right for the colors.
As the colors pass before the graduates, the candidates for graduation take turns in saluting the colors.
Erwin Lucas, Cebu City. His staff, Julio Napeñas, La Union. Jose George Corpus, Metro Manila. Romeo Nebres, Albay. Adriel Cruz, Pangasinan. Echo Company Commander, Cesar Rebolledo, Quezon City. His staff, Adriel Tolentino, Pampanga. William Abellera, Baguio City. First Platoon Leader, Rogelio Damaso, Cagayan. Second Platoon Leader, Danilo Alceriza, Pampanga. Foxtrot Company Commander, Carmelo Balmoria, Cebu City. His staff, Jesus Bucayu, Quezon City. Jesus Castellan, Baguio City. Eliseo Posadas, San Carlos City. First Platoon Leader, Julius Cesar Guillermo, Pasay City. Second Platoon Leader, Alberico Maramo, Metro Manila. Fourth Battalion Commander, Danny Constantino, Nueva Ecija. His staff, Jojo De Leon, Legazpi City. Benji Arceo, Tarlac. Seth Berzon, Baguio City. Rolly Tibulce, Isabela. Ghost Company Commander, Leo Balagag, Metro Manila. His staff, Alex Lopez, Quezon City. Alex Telly, Iloilo City. Willie Ona, Batangas. First Platoon Leader, Rod Jimenez, Pangasinan. Second Platoon Leader, Danny Borja, Metro Manila. Off Company Commander, Alex Arevalo, Baguio City. His staff, Klein Campanilla, Quezon City. Armand Bañez, La Union. Jojo Fernandez, Iloilo. First Platoon Leader, Amin Undog, Cebu. Second Platoon Leader, Joey Taglit, Albay.
We have witnessed the test and review of the Corps of Cadets of the Philippine Military Academy. Some 800 of them. And right in front of the grandstand, in a single file, are the members of the graduating class of 81.
You can imagine, Joe, the pride of these graduating cadets in themselves, as well as the pride of their relatives, their parents, their loved ones who have come here to witness this very significant occasion, a memorable occasion for the graduating class of 1981 of the Philippine Military Academy. I'm sure their parents and their loved ones have stood by them in times of difficulty through the years of training that they have been here at the PMA here in Baguio City. And I cannot just imagine the feeling that they are now undergoing. I'm sure, like I said earlier, it's quite a mixed emotion, feeling of sadness at having to leave behind something that has become a part of them for the past 4 years and meeting the new challenges that lie ahead.
Graduating class takes a bow before the grandstand.
And to you, the Commander-in-Chief.
As you mentioned earlier, Dada, if you were to look at individual faces, they look grim and stern and all that, but we have been fortunate to, well, know a couple of PMA graduates, now officers of
The band is
armed
leaving.
forces, and they're
The last parade for the class of 1981 cadets of PMA is through. Thank you.
Again, it's very sentimental. The Corps has left to carry on the job that these set of graduates is leaving behind, and a tall order is left to the senior class that's coming in for 1981. And also, there is a tall order for these people as they brave the world that they've been looking forward to, training very hard for. To join any of the 4 major services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
Ordinarily, Dada, you wouldn't see the cadets break up in formula like this. But perhaps, but because it is graduated day, sort of privilege given the graduating cadets. As you can see, some of them have started to go to the grandstand to look for their relatives. Some of them wave to their friends as they march away from the Borromeo field and on to their barracks. Dada?
Yes, and this is only one of the highlights of today's celebration. As a matter of fact, it is not just a one-day celebration. This goes on for a whole week, which the cadets here at the PMA dub as March Week. After the formal military honors given to the President and the formal presentation of the graduating class, there will be the commencement exercises to be held later on this morning at the Baguio Convention. We hope you will be joining us later on when we give you the coverage of that event.
Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is a continuation of our coverage of the last day of the Philippine Military Academy's March Week. From the PMA complex at Fort del Pilar, we moved over to the Baguio City Convention Center, which is situated in what used to be a seedy section of town, but which today is a sprawling complex of fine and imposing buildings, chief of which are the UP and the nearby Science Hotel, the Supreme Court to the east. On the rim of this, what is locally known as the Government Center. In a few moments, President Marcos, as dictated by tradition, will be here inside the convention hall to address the graduating class of the PMA graduates. And as expected also, the President will give out the individual awards to outstanding graduates of the class. We have 2 platoons of cadets outside of the building. And as you can hear, the President is honors. As I stated earlier, the President is here today to keep tradition, a tradition which he has been privileged to keep unbroken for at least 15 years since he became President in 1965, the first address of the President before the PMA. We could see the honor guard in front of the honor guards in front of this building. But that I wouldn't see myself where the President is trying to get ready inside the lobby. Although I could see from where we stand, Defense Minister and some of the brass of the military. I'd like also to mention that a large delegation of locals have come here to not only to attend the the President later on this afternoon, but I talked officials, but also to officials as far away as Ifugao and Bangkok. They're all here to meet with the president. Inside this convention hall, data started filling up as early as 9 this morning. A situation report from you inside. The president has just finished trooping the line, and in a short while he'll be coming inside this huge convention center to address the graduates of the Philippine Military Academy, Class 81. The president gives a snappy salute. He acknowledges the honors given him.
Stop!
Honors given the president. He enters the central door of the Baguio City Convention Center, accompanied by PMA Superintendent Alma, Defense Minister Angela, AFP Chief of Staff Romeo Espino, and the other commanders of the different services of the AFP. The president looks around. Will the officers of the various services there's General Alma of the Constabulary, General Sarmiento, Commodore Alejandro of the Navy, who will sort of lead the procession inside, going in. Right behind the top brass of the armed forces of the Philippines. President Marcos confers with General Espino, Mr. Enrique. It is rather a solemn occasion. Philippine Military Academy Band.
take over.
A very pleasant afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. Right here at the Convention Hall in Baguio City, the commencement exercises of the 1981 graduating class of the Philippine Military Academy
Praise
is
to
about
Allah,
to begin.
Lord of the world, the beneficent, the merciful, honor of the day of judgment, Thee alone we worship. Thee alone we ask for help. Show us the straight path, the path of those whom Thou hast favored, not the path of those who earn Thine anger, but of those who go astray. Lord, on the occasion of the graduation day of the Philippine Military Academy, the cadets of class 1981, we all together raise our minds and hearts in gratitude to You for having given answers to our prayers as You have promised those who diligently seek Your help and intercession. Bless these our brothers here present, who proudly now stand at the threshold of a new life, and endeavor as young officers of their armed forces, and entrusted with an awesome duty to be of faithful service to You and their country. Help them to leave each day of the passing year in useful efforts meant not for the things of their own and their fellowmen and their countrymen, but contributory and leading to the fulfillment of Your divine will above all things. Man's days indeed are brief at the longest. There is so much to be done that we can do, and we cannot afford to waste a single hour of the duration which You have allotted to us. However permanent they may seem, they are perishable and perishing, transient and fast flying when compared with You, Your eternal designs and promises. You are the unchanging one, and the only one without end. Your promises will be fulfilled, and all will be well with Your chosen ones, for as long as they place their trust and put their hope in You, and as they feel each day for You and others, they too enrich their lives and souls for time and eternity. You have sustained them in their struggles of yesterday. May You give them the same sustaining help they need in all their endeavors as they now face with challenges and uncertainties of tomorrow. Bless our Commander-in-Chief, the President and Prime Minister, President Marcos, and all those who work with him in government. May they always be one and united in their pledge of greater performance and unwavering commitment to public service and humanity in your name. This is our prayer. Amen.
Colonel Ruperto Fernandez, Chief of Chaplains of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, giving the invocation at the start here of the formal ceremonies marking the commencement exercises of the Philippine Military Academy class of 1981.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Ferdinand E. Marcos, President and Prime Minister of the Republic of the Philippines.
Brigadier General Angel Canati, Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, introducing President Marcos.
General Canati, the Minister of National Defense, Minister of Alfonso Angulo, the Chief of Staff, General Spino, Dean of the School of the College, the Major Service Commanders and Generals of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, foreign guests, Your Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, the graduates and the new officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, ladies and gentlemen. We are gathered on this occasion to crown success and to honor tradition. Every year, young men of character and ambition from all parts of the country sally forth from these institutions to start a career in the noble profession of arms, to serve people and country. Many bid for the training provided by these academies, but only few complete the test. And those of you who graduate today are among the chosen few, part of the cream of manhood of our land, who on this day and henceforth dedicate their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to the motherland. This setting is old, it is familiar, but the crowning moment of success is always new. For all of you young graduates, it is the fulfillment of your youthful dreams. When you entered this institution 4 years ago, dutifully underwent the rigors of training and study, and all for the chance to serve in the armed forces of our country. This is a moment of joy for all of us, and I share in the happiness of this class of 1981, 161 strong, the highest number that any class ever had of the Philippine Military Academy. I convey to you, as Commander-in-Chief, and in my personal capacity, my heartfelt congratulations, and I'm certain that I speak for the entire people of the Republic of the Philippines. I share in the joy and pride of your parents and loved ones, to whom this occasion is also a crowning moment of success. And as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, I now welcome you, graduating class of 1981, at least all those who are Filipinos, into the armed service of our country. You join our armed forces at a crucial moment of our national history. Nearly 2 months have now passed since we brought to a close the state of martial law in our country and proclaimed our nation's passage to political normalization. Today we find ourselves in the midst of a campaign for the April 7th plebiscite that will determine the future shape of our political system. And subsequent to that plebiscite, if the proposed amendment should be approved, the nation will then elect a president. Full political normalization will take place when a president is elected directly by our people on June 7th and is sworn into office on the 30th of June. There will be new definitions of the powers of the head of state and head of government. There will emerge a new concord between the executive and the legislative powers of government. And the interim Batasan Pambansa will then be interim in name only, for in fact it shall enjoy then all the powers of the regular National Assembly provided for by our Constitution. The lifting of martial law and the acceleration of the process of normalization are developments that have great meaning and relevance to the role of soldiers and our armed forces. These developments do not alter, of course, the sworn role of the military as the guardian of the nation's security. They have merely brought to a close some of the mechanisms and instruments made necessary by the martial necessity, and which must now be replaced by measures and actions of vigilance befitting the national situation today. For the most part, we have been concerned during the past few months with the task of maintaining peace and order in our country, especially in those areas where we continue to face various problems of pockets of disorder and rebellion. It is important that we see clearly how the major services of the armed forces and our law enforcement agencies relate to this vital task of keeping public order and maintaining civil peace, which is also a priority mission even without martial law. Let us start with the Philippine Constabulary. It is a part of the armed forces. It is a major service, but it is also by constitutional mandate a part of the integrated, or is the integrated, national police force. This mandate cannot be changed by ordinary law, and it is in that light that we have defined the role of the constabulary in our national life. That role is basically addressed to police work and law enforcement, which may be likened to what is called in military parlance garrison duty. Along with the local police agencies, the Philippine Constabulary is tasked with keeping public order and preserving the peace of our streets and communities. But this often exceeds mere garrison duty, as you and I know. It is said that it is not supposed to engage in combat operations like our ground forces, the other armed forces. It is only when civil disorder cannot fully be controlled by the constabulary and the local police agencies that the other AFP services, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, come in to help under the concept of a unified command or a task force. The recent events, let's say in Pata Island, in Mindanao, provide an example of how our armed forces have joined in the task of preserving peace and order. Police action has not been sufficient to quell the recent flashes of rebellion, disorder, and trickery in that area, and it has been necessary that the other services be brought in to help in the pacification drive. Underlying our actions in Mindanao is the basic objective that we must not only strive to maintain peace and order there, but also strengthen the autonomous government in regions 9 and 12 in Mindanao. For just as the strength and autonomy of these governments have proven to be vital factors in providing an availing solution to the once festering rebellion in the South, so are they now integral to meeting the occasional classes of terrorism that have recently visited some local communities in the South. We must therefore continue, and we will continue, to strengthen that civil government, the autonomous government in Mindanao. And with respect to action necessary to peace and order, we shall place the constabulary in their proper service, and whenever necessary, the major services of our armed forces shall continue to perform their task. It may be reported at this point that our actions in Pata Island already bear out the fruitfulness of our response. The pacification drive has swiftly brought back peace to some beleaguered communities, and it has immeasurably strengthened the position of the autonomous government vis-a-vis the situation. We have accomplished this and similar salutary results in our ongoing peacekeeping efforts in Mindanao without impairing the strict conduct for our men in uniform. The men in uniform do not hurt civilians. The men in uniform go after the enemy. Attention to this code has lately been brought to light by reason of the provision in the proposed constitutional amendment, which seeks to grant immunity to men in uniform and as well as those in the civil service who act lawfully in fulfillment of lawful orders of the President and their superiors. This immunity provision mainly seeks immunity for the President, not only for the President, but for those acting in his behalf, from harassment in court which can occur after they leave office. Now, under existing principles of law, with or without this constitutional amendment, men in uniform are free of liability for obeying legal orders. But liability is different from immunity from suit. Freedom from liability means you can be prosecuted in court, but you can set up the defense that you obey legal orders. This will exempt you from any criminal or civil liability. But without this constitutional amendment, you will have to submit yourself to trial even by civil court. Harassment may result from this. Instances of such harassment are so disquieting as it happened in the aftermath of the American Civil War, when officers of the Union were besieged by civil suits filed by residents of the American South. Recently, the regional commander in Region 7 was charged criminally and civilly. It is General Narcisse, by those who were arrested for violating the law. And we in government had to withdraw the charges against the civilians in order that the civilians may withdraw the charges against General Narcisse. There are any number of suits and actions that have been taken against the Minister of National Defense, for instance, against the Chief of Staff, against the Chief of Constabulary, against the Director General of NISA, against the Deputy Ministers who are in charge of prisoners or detention prisoners, against immediate task force commanders. Now, these were, in my mind, when I insisted at the caucuses of the ruling party, the KPL, the Kilusan Bagong Lipunan, that it is the law exempts the commanding officer and grants him immunity from suit and harassment, then by all means those who have obeyed his orders must be equally immune. Otherwise, the commander-in-chief should not be immune from suit. This was my position that has been taken from the very beginning, because I believe that the commander-in-chief should take no precedence with those who have followed his orders. No officer, whether commanding officer or not, should order any action which he himself cannot take or will not take. Recently also in the United States we have seen the spectacle of the former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger having had to face a number of suits concerning his actions as a subordinated former President Nixon. But let us be very clear as to the purpose of this immunity provision. We are especially concerned with nuisance and harassment suits against lawful acts taken by officers and men in uniform upon orders, legal orders from superiors and from the President. Immunity will not cover abuses by either men in uniform or officials in government. Neither does it cover crime punishable under the Articles of War or the revised Penal Code. Immunity is a protection against harassment, not a mantle for wrongdoing. And this important qualification applies both to the President and for those acting in his behalf. The practical application of this provision is that whenever a suit is filed in court against someone, the court will then decide whether to throw it out or entertain it. If found to be nothing more than an effort to harass, and if found to have been filed for action taken in obedience to legal orders, then the case will be thrown out. The basic idea behind this is to spare the civil servant and the military man the unpleasant and time-consuming and very costly task of having to answer all sorts of charges against him, even when they are patently without merit. Here it is pertinent to point out that in the case of our men in uniform, we maintain and observe the highest standards of conduct. And at this point, may I say that the demand for standards or the standards of conduct for the men in uniform are higher and stricter than those that we apply to civilian employees of government. And this is why sometimes I am a little, should I say, setback whenever I hear of hazing in the military academy. The habits of hazing are often carried over into the profession, carried over into the armed forces of the Philippines. We have noticed that not only reserve officers, but graduates of the military academy have been charged with various practices which sprung from the habit of hazing in the military academy. The honor code is another thing. We can compromise on other matters, but not on these matters that I have read. There is such a thing as the Articles of War relating to conduct and becoming an officer, a soldier, and for such conduct we exact punishment befitting the mischief. Even if we would not do the same with respect to a civil service. And under our system of military service, our soldiery is subordinated to a strict code of conduct enforced by many layers of supervisory personnel that do not exist in the civil government. I speak of this because of the fears raised by some of our critics to the effect that the immunity clause will be utilized in order to cover up for crimes committed by the men in uniform. Whether we want it or not, this immunity provision cannot. These layers of supervision and disciplinary control begin from the immediate superior officer of the man in uniform. It may pass to a higher ranking officer and ultimately end up with the Inspector General. Then the promotions board that go over your 2015, the personnel officer of your own unit, especially of the Major Service Command, periodically reviews your 2015. This is demanded of every man in uniform. Then ultimately the Chief Staff and the General Staff, ultimately to the Minister of National Defense, and finally the office of the President, who is also Commander-in-Chief. Now, this whole series of checks and reviews on the conduct of our soldiery preserves the essential element in our culture as a people. For our culture as a people is peculiar. It demands of our soldiers the highest standard of performance in duty, irrespective of the presence or absence of the articles of war or the customs of the service. Precisely because we recognize power in the man in uniform, we also do not tolerate malfeasance and abuse of office. It is so repugnant to our traditions to see a soldier abuse his power that we consign him not only to punishment, but to dishonor as well. Society punishes him, not only the law and government. In this regard, it may be said that our people may sometimes tolerate abuse, even extreme abuse by civilian employees in government. This we have seen in the past. Although today witnesses are coming out to point out all those who are corrupt in the civil government in order that they may be prosecuted in the Tanud Bayan and in the Sandigan Bayan. But for the men in uniform, the attitude of our people is completely different. We have a culture which demands and expects of them the highest dedication to duty and exemplary conduct in the service. Yet to our soldiers, and especially to those who hail from this institution of training and learning, it is only right and meet that it be expected of them by our people. You would not have it otherwise, I know. You, the graduates, the members of your class as well as the other classes, for the idea and the values you live by are immutable. They are the bedrock of the profession of arms. And anyone who knows the life of the soldier knows also that without that foundation, the entire concept of military service or of an effective armed forces is impossible. You know the histories of many armies who, upon demoralization and the loss of the values upon which their service is founded, have perished and lost not only the battles against the enemy, but lost their country and lost their lives. Utmost care is needed that the code of the soldier be observed, preserved, and protected from the sufferings of pernicious influences in an age of growing permissiveness. And now where should these values be more zealously guarded and conserved than in the Philippine Military Academy, which is the mainspring of leadership in the armed forces of our country. It is this code which distinguishes the Philippine Military Academy from any other institution in the country. It is this which confers this institution its very spirit, its very soul, its name, its image. And if this code of honor is compromised during the training of cadets, then the very foundation of the academy is undermined. The academy will have lost its reason for being. What we seek to maintain in the service, we must equally preserve and promote in the training of young men for it. No individual or group interest should be allowed to compromise the code. Those who attempt to do so should realize that they are toying not only with the destiny of this or that man, but with the security of the entire country. For they shall be accomplices to the crime of producing poor quality leadership of an organization that performs a vital role in society in ensuring its very survival. Of the things that need change, we must muster the wisdom to know what these are and how they should be changed, and the courage and the will to change them. Of the timeless and immutable virtues and truth, we must likewise summon the courage and the will to preserve them and to guard them from blemish. This you have been told 100 times. This you have lived by, not only during your 4 years, but in the many years that you will serve your country. The Philippine Military Academy is our one and only military academy, and will remain so for a long, long time. We owe it to the Filipino soldier, to their families and loved ones, and above all to our people and to our country, that the Academy performs its role in a manner that brings honor to itself, glory for the country, and assurance of our people's freedom and security. Members of the graduating class of 1981 of the Philippine Military Academy, I extend to you all the warmest congratulations, and I bid you welcome to the armed forces of the Philippines and the armed forces of your respective countries. The nations await you. We wish you good luck, and carry on with the mission which many amongst you and before you have carried on their shoulders and in their hearts with nobility. Thank you.
The address of the Commanding General of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency President Ferdinand Edelin Marcos, to the graduating class of 1981 of the Philippine Military Academy, right here at the Convention Center of Baguio City. Brigadier General Angel Canati once again to confer the degree of Bachelor of Science on the candidates of graduation.
By virtue of the powers vested in me by the Academic Board, I hereby declare you graduates of the Philippine Military Academy and confer upon you the degree of Bachelor of Science. Congratulations.
Upon the announcement of the Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, Brigadier General Angel Canati, the 161 young men right here at the Convention Center have been declared graduates with the Bachelor of Science degree in Military Science. Following this point of the ceremony is the awarding of diplomas to the 161 members of the graduating class.
Cadet Steve Wee Chung, Singapore. Cadet Antonio A. Habulan Jr., Quezon City. Cadet Francisco Don C. Montenegro, magna cum laude, Batangas. Cadet Harold S. Ochoco, cum laude, La Union. Cadet Norman C. Legaspi, Quezon City. Cadet Emmanuel T. Bautista, Marikina. Cadet Benito C. Estipona, Sorsogon.
Cadet Virgilio O. Domingo, cum laude, Mandaluyong. Cadet Alex Paul Monteagudo, Davao City. Cadet Edgar L. Punay, South Cotabato. Cadet Crispin P. Mercado, Quezon Province. Cadet Robert F. Lee, cum laude, Quezon City. Cadet Leonardo A. Espina, Quezon City. Cadet Oscar P. Lopez, cum laude, Marikina. Cadet Nestor Año Nuevo, Quezon Province. Cadet Philip L. Cakayan, La Union. Cadet Abu Sarin bin Baha, Malaysia. Cadet Marcelo T. Villalba II, Cagayan de Oro City. Cadet Richard C. Tigaan, Iloilo. Cadet Arturo G. Vidal, Bukidnon. Cadet Victorio T. Pagaduan, Tarlac. Cadet Jodel Jose Verdote, Albay. Cadet Roberto D.V. Santos, Bulacan. Cadet Ernesto A. Tesoro Jr., Iloilo. Cadet Ray C. Ardo, Negros Occidental. Cadet Edwin C. Clerigo, San Juan. Cadet Benito T. De Leon, Cagayan. Cadet Epifanio Melvin M. Rivera, Isabela. Cadet Catalino S. Puy, Laguna. Cadet Leo Cresanto M. Ferrer, Pangasinan. Cadet Joseph Rostum Peña, Cavite City. Cadet Crisólogo M. Naive, Camarines Norte. Cadet Bienvenido G. Latag, Lipa City. Cadet Jaime S. Bernardino, Rizal. Cadet Edgar F. Kinsay, Zambales. Cadet Mario O. Soriano, Pangasinan. Cadet Romeo D.V. Poki, Isabela. Cadet Gregory H. Ramos, Parañaque. Cadet Jose Ronnie V. Velasco, Pangasinan. Cadet Marcelo P. Garbo Jr., Pangasinan. Cadet Leopoldo B. Santos Jr., Bulacan. Cadet Gabriel G. Dizon, Fort Bonifacio. Cadet Rafael T. Tadeo Jr., Bulacan. Cadet Charles T. Calima Jr., La Union. Cadet Manuel R. Barcena, Pangasinan. Cadet Randon M. Celirio, Quezon City. Cadet Romulo R. Monasterio, Parañaque. Cadet James D. Dullas, Zambales. Cadet George F. Catameo, Rizal. Cadet Enrico G. Salapong, Bulacan. Cadet Joel Jesus M. Supan, Tarlac. Cadet Edgardo Rene C. Samonte, Mandaluyong. Cadet Rex Milton A. Dolino, Legazpi City. Cadet Richard Q. Lagrana, Negros Occidental. Cadet Eligio D.V. Ramos, Nueva Ecija. Cadet Franklin Jesus B. Bukayo, Quezon City. Cadet Fernando E. Baltazar, Quezon City. Cadet George A. Rabusa, Camarines Sur. Cadet Rani M. Escalada, Bataan. Cadet Danilo M. Servando, Iloilo City. Cadet Rolando M. Dizon, Makati. Cadet Luis L. Saligumba, Quezon City. Cadet Nicanor E. Dolohan, Zambales. Cadet Abner S. Indino, Tagbilaran City. Cadet Percival D. Abu, Batangas. Cadet Roland C. Amarille, Pasay City. Cadet Leandro M. Exconde, San Pablo City. Cadet Angel Marie A. Tipo, Ilocos Sur. Cadet Cesar Dionisio T. Cedillo, Negros Oriental. Cadet Felipe L. Rojas Jr., Cebu City. Cadet Virgilio S. Velasco, Laguna. Cadet Romeo L. Gapus, La Union. Cadet Reynaldo D. Godinez, Lapu-Lapu City. Cadet Jonas Jose M. Garcia, Zambales. Cadet Felix J. Castro Jr., Muntinlupa. Cadet Joselito Vasconcillo, Bulacan. Cadet Napoleon R. Estilles, Fort Bonifacio. Cadet Manuel C. Morales, Quezon City. Cadet Jaime H. Morente, North Cotabato. Cadet Fernando G. Pagaduan Jr., Ilocos Norte. Cadet Rustico O. Guerrero, Caloocan City. Cadet Reginald D. Villasanta, Surigao del Sur. Cadet Antonio M. Mendoza, Batangas. Cadet Gabriel B. Riego de Dios, Cotabato. Cadet Remigio M. De Vera, Cabanatuan. Cadet Wilson R. Victorio, Pangasinan. Cadet Herbert Juan P. Pilorin, Ilocos Sur. Cadet Pedro B. Aquino Jr., Muntinlupa. Cadet Jonas C. Tumagaysay, Iloilo City. Cadet Michael N. Asperin, Quezon City. Cadet Mario D. Balandra, Iloilo City. Cadet Samuel M. Yordan, Mandaue City. Cadet Dioscoro T. Reyes, Nueva Ecija. Cadet Mark Edison B. Del Arma, Iloilo. Cadet Raulito M. Manggubat, Pasay City. Cadet Rainier Fojas Salvaña, Cagayan de Oro City. Cadet Miguel Pio D. Saquisame, Cavite. Cadet Renan Hilario F. Mendoza, Cebu City. Cadet Rolando A. Puruganan, La Union. Cadet Jesus Ferdinand F. Gamad, Pampanga. Cadet Raul Basilio D. Boac, Baguio City. Cadet Edgardo R. Calip, Lipa City. Cadet Michael A. Sanchez, Quezon City. Cadet Alfredo T. Caico, Quezon City. Cadet Arthur P. Ang, Laguna. Cadet Emmanuel B. Junio, Pampanga. Cadet Isabelo H. Gador, Cebu City. Cadet Natalio Icarma III, Quezon City. Cadet Eric Van de la Rama, Quezon City. Cadet Yerson D. Dipaiso, Benguet. Cadet Jose D. Mabanta Jr., Pasig. Cadet Jesus A. Quisano, Quezon City. Cadet Philip George Demos, Benguet. Cadet Rolando R. Ricafrente, Lucena. Cadet Rodel D. Calungsod, Cebu. Cadet Federico E. Lasiste Jr., Quezon City. Cadet Celso P. Poloan, San Pablo City. Cadet Emmanuel G. Addison, Fort Bonifacio. Cadet Marcelino J. Mendoza, Quezon City. Cadet Bernardo T. Mabagu, Isabela. Cadet Noel B. Miano, Pangasinan. Cadet Rodolfo D. V. Tejada, Pangasinan. Cadet Roman Roque M. Cueves, Camarines Norte. Cadet Paterno P. Hernandez, Mountain Province. Cadet Gil J. Hitosis, Sorsogon. Cadet Wency T. Pascual, Nueva Ecija. Cadet Nestor A. Genuino Jr., Cavite City. Cadet Enrique G. Macaraig, Laguna. Cadet Emerson G. Pareja, Cavite. Cadet I-4I Magbanwa, Bacolod City. Cadet Carlos C. Solomon, Marikina. Cadet Mario A. Avenido, Negros Oriental. Cadet Joselito P. Bernardo, Mandaluyong. Cadet Gregorio Pio Katapang Jr., Quezon City. Cadet Domingo J. Tutaan Jr., Mandaluyong. Cadet Raymond Joseph P. Mendoza, Parañaque. Cadet Edwin Manuel Remotique, La Union. Cadet Emmanuel F. Mendoza, Pasay. Cadet Yusaketo P. Manalo, Marikina. Cadet Teodorico D.R. Raqueño, Makati. Cadet Leonardo S. Tibaen, Mountain Province. Cadet Catalino B. Rodriguez, Baguio City. Cadet Noe P. Linsangan, Quezon City. Cadet Joel T. Alvarez, Sulu. Cadet Arnolfo A. Atendido, Lalo, Cagayan. Cadet Rocky P. Victoria, Legazpi City. Cadet Tani Y. David, Pampanga. Cadet Luis P. Binoya Jr., Quezon City. Cadet Amadeo J. Junio, Pangasinan. Cadet Joel G. Caringal, Laguna. Cadet Elmer R. Amo, Naga. Cadet Mario O. de la Vega, Nueva Ecija. Cadet Raul L. Dimatatak, Muntinlupa. Cadet Alan L. Purisima, Ilocos Sur. Cadet Cipriano E. Querol Jr., Pangasinan. Cadet Roberto R. Pasion, Lawag City. Cadet Pedrito E. Presto Jr., Pangasinan. Cadet Vergel M. Nasino, Santa Ana. Cadet Alan R. Luga, Cebu City. Cadet Arnold I. Bakay, Cagayan.
Members of the
For graduating as
class.
number 1 in the graduation merit roll of class 1981, considering overall performance in all prescribed courses of studies and activities for 4 years, the 1981 Presidential Sabre, donated by His Excellency Ferdinand E. Marcos, President of the Philippines, is hereby awarded to Cadet Sawit E. Netnio.
The head of this year's class is Sawit Netnio from Thailand. He received the Presidential Sabre from President Marcos.
For graduating as number 2 in the graduate merit roll of class 1981, considering overall performance in all prescribed courses of studies and activities for 4 years, the 1981 Minister of National Defense Sabre, donated by the Honorable Juan Ponce Enrile, Minister of National Defense, is hereby awarded to Cadet Dwi Chung.
Another foreigner graduating at the top of this year's class of the PMA 1981 graduating class.
For graduating as Cadet First and Regimental Commander of the Cadet Corps, Armed Forces of the Philippines during the academic year 1980-1981, the 1981 Chief of Staff donated by General Romeo Cristino, Chief of Staff, Armed Forces of the Philippines, is hereby awarded to Cadet Catalino S. Puy.
After having received their diplomas, the 161
For being the member of class
graduates of the
1981 who has rendered the most valuable service to the Academy in the field of athletics, the 1981 Athletic Sabre, donated by the Honorable Ernesto H. Bueno, Mayor of Baguio City, is hereby awarded to Cadet Renan Hilario F. Mendoza.
The special awards are being given out to the outstanding members of the class of 1981, this time the Athletic Award. The special awards have just been given out by the Superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, General Canapi. Now, Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile. As he makes the announcement of commission.
By authority of the President of the Republic of the Philippines and pursuant to Article 4, Section 31 of Commonwealth Act Number 1, as amended by Republic Act 1038, I hereby appoint you graduates of the Philippine Military Academy Class of 1981, Second Lieutenant, or ensigns in the regular force, Armed Forces of the Philippines, with relative rank corresponding to your standing in the graduation merit roll, effective this day, 15th of March, 1981. Congratulations.
Another confirmation of graduation to these members of the graduating class of 1981 PMA, this time from the Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile, as they were commissioned into the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
Itaas ang kanang kamay at sumunod sa akin sa panunumpa sa katungkulan. Ako si bilang pangalan ng ng tirahan na itinalaga sa katungkulan bilang pangalawang tiniente ng hukbong kasihan ng Pilipinas. Ay sa team na nanunumpa na tutuparin kong buong husay at katapatan sa abot ng aking kakayahan ang mga tungkulin ng aking kasalukuyang katungkulan at ng mga iba pang pagkaraan nito'y gagampanan ko sa ilalim ng Republika ng Pilipinas na aking itataguyod at ipagtatanggol ang konstitusyon ng Pilipinas na tunay na manalalig at tatalima ako rito. Nasusundin ko ang mga batas, mga kautosang legal at mga dekretong pinaiiral ng mga sadyang itinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. At kusa kong babalikatin ang pananagutang ito na walang anumang pasubali o hangaring umiwas. Katihan nawa ako ng Diyos. Binabati ko kayo lahat.
The commanding generals of the four major services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines are to take turns in administering the oath of office to the graduates commissioned into their particular major service. Earlier, we had Major General Fortunato Abat of the Philippine Army, the commanding general, that is, and now Major General Fidel Ramos, the Chief of Constabulary, administering the oath of office for the Philippine Constabulary.
Na itinalaga sa katungkulang bilang pangalawang teniente ng hukbong tagapamayapan ng Pilipinas ay taimtim na nanunumpa na tutuparin ko ang buong husay at katapatan sa abot ng ating kakayahan ang mga tungkulin ng ating kasalukuyang katungkulan at ng mga iba pang pagkaraan nito'y gagampanan ko sa ilalim ng Republika ng Pilipinas at aking itataguyod at ipagtatanggol ang saligang batas ng Pilipinas na ako'y tunay na mananalig at tatalima rito. Nasusundin ko ang mga batas, mga utos na ayon sa batas at ang mga dekretong pinairal ng mga sadyang itinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. At kusa kong babalikatin ang pananagutang ito nang walang anumang pasubali o hangaring umiwas. Pasiyan nawa ako ng Diyos. Congratulations to all of you.
Now, Major General Samuel Sarmiento, Commanding General of the Philippine Air Force, administers the oath of office to those who will be commissioned into the Philippine Air Force.
Kunyari, itaas ang kanang kamay, susunod sa akin sa panunumpa ng katungkulan. Ako si, ang pangalan nyo, ng iyong tirahan, na itinalaga sa katungkulan bilang pangalawang tiniente na humbog ng pagawid ng Pilipinas. Ay taimtim na nanunumpa na tutuparin kong buong husay at katapatan sa abot ng aking kakayahan ang mga tungkulin
ng aking kasalukuyang katungkulan at ng mga iba pang pagkaraan nito'y gagampanan ko sa ilalim ng Republika ng Pilipinas na aking itataguyod at ipagtatanggol ang Konstitusyon ng Pilipinas na tunay na mananalig at tatalima ako rito. Susundin ko ang mga batas, mga kautusan legal, at mga dekretong pinaiiral ng mga sadyang itinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. At kusa kong babalikatin ang pananagutang ito nang walang anumang pasubali o hangaring umiwas. Kasihan nawa po ng Diyos. Congratulations.
Now, Rear Admiral Simeon Alejandro, Flag Officer in Command of the Philippine Navy, conducts the oath
Nangyaring
of
itaas
office
ng kanang
on the
kamay at
graduates who
ngunit
will be
sa akin
commissioned into the
sa
Philippine Navy.
panunumpa sa katungkulan. Ako ang pangalan ng antirahan na itinalaga sa katungkulan bilang ensign ng hukbong dagat ng Pilipinas ay taimtim na nanunumpa na tutuparin kong buong husay at katapatan sa abot ng aking kakayahan ang mga tungkulin ng aking kasalukuyang katungkulan at ng mga iba pang pagkarang nito ay gagampanan ko sa ilalim ng Republika ng Pilipinas na aking itataguyod at ipagtatanggol ang Konstitusyon ng Pilipinas na tunay na mananalig at tatalima ako rito. Nasusundin ko ang mga batas, mga kautosang legal at mga dekretong pinaiiral na mga sadyang tinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. At kusa akong babalikatin ang pananagutang ito nang walang anumang pasubali o hangaring umiwas, kasihan nawa ako ng Diyos. Binabati ko kayong lahat.
The commanding generals of the four major services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines have just conducted the oath of office of the graduates to be commissioned into their respective commands. As you know, there are also foreign graduates among the batch of 1981 PMA class, and the representatives of these countries will administer their own offices, oath of offices for their respective armed forces.
Dibeli yang Maha di Paduka Baginda yang di Pertuan Agong, the King of Malaysia, has graciously consented the granting of a commission to Officer Cadet Abisarin bin Bakar in the rank of Lieutenant in the Malaysian Armed Forces on the successful completion of his Officer Cadet training from the Philippine Military Academy in Baguio City, the Republic of the Philippines, on the 15th day in the month of March in the year 1981, as conveyed by the Grand Chamberlain of the Istana Negara, Kuala Lumpur.
The lone graduate from Malaysia in this year's PMA graduating class received his oath of office.
Ampun Tuanku, Patih sesungguhnya berikrar tetap akan taat setia ke bawah budi yang maha mulia di Paduka Baginda. Patih mengaku akan mempertahankan kedaulatan dan kemerdekaan negara. Patih sebagai pegawai tentera juga berikrar akan melaksanakan segala kewajipan dan tanggung jawab yang diamanahkan kepada parti dan berazam menjaga tata tertib dan tradisi angkatan tersebut. Ampun tuanku.
The graduate from Malaysia in this year's PMA class expressing his pledge of loyalty to the Armed Forces of Malaysia. Following now is the administration of oath of office to the graduate from Singapore to be administered by the ambassador of that country.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Steve Wei Chung, of the Singapore Armed Forces, having been appointed to the position of Second Lieutenant, Singapore Armed Forces, hereby solemnly swear that I will well and faithfully discharge to the best of my ability the duties of my present position and of all others I may hereafter hold under the Republic of Singapore, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Singapore, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will obey the laws, legal orders, and the decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of Singapore, and that I impose these obligations upon myself voluntarily, without mental reservation or purpose of or evasion. So help me God. Congratulations.
Lieutenant Chung Yu of Singapore has just administered his oath of office and pledge of loyalty to the Republic of Singapore Armed Forces of the Philippines. He also graduates as the second in his class. He received 5 other awards: the Minister of National Defense, Sabres in Humanistic Place, the Social Science class, and Bully Plaque, and ACF. Now the student from the Republic of Philippines. A very brief oath of office administered to the students from Thailand, who also graduates with honors at the top of this year's class, the 1981 class of the Philippine Military Academy. That was Tawit Netniong.
Will you raise your right hand and repeat after me the code of conduct of the Filipino soldier? I am a Filipino soldier. I will support and defend the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. I am a Filipino soldier. I will fight all forces that will destroy the freedom and independence of the Filipino people. I am a Filipino soldier. I will obey the laws, legal orders, and decrees of my local superiors at all times. I am a Filipino soldier. I will uphold the supremacy of civilian authority over the military in war or in peace. I am a Filipino soldier. I will live and die in the true Filipino tradition of valor and honor, duty and loyalty. To all these, I pledge my life, my treasure, and my sacred honor. Congratulations and welcome to the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
The code of conduct of the Filipino soldier administered to the graduating class by General Romeo Espino, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And by that very action, the General also formally accepted the members of this class into the folds of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Now, the Alma Mater song of the Philippine Military Academy to be joined also by the public. Traditional cheers marking the end of the graduation ceremonies for this year's commencement exercises here at the Philippine Military Academy, together with the throwing of the hats by the cadets. One can only imagine the mixed feelings that these graduates have right now as they enter a new stage in their lives after having gone through 4 very rigorous years of training. They now brave the world which they have been preparing for the past 4 years. Of course, graduation to the PMA cadet is a truly memorable event. It is an event of success, notably with a sense of pride, distinction, and honor. For, as you very well know, every PMAer is a firm and resolute guardian of peace and progress in a democracy. He virtually becomes a standard bearer of that symbolic conscience of the armed forces of the Philippines and of the Republic. On his shoulders now rests the responsibility of protecting national integrity. And as products of the Philippine Military Academy, these men stand vigilant as the country's pride in the task of nation building. They have just been proclaimed graduated by no less than the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency President Ferdinand Marcos, followed by pronouncement of graduation by the Minister of National Defense, Juan Ponce Enrile, and the commanding generals of the 4 major services of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. These graduates will, from here on, dedicate their ideals, dedicate their efforts to nation building in the service of the people in their respective branches of the armed forces, whether it be with the Philippine Navy, the Philippine Army, the Philippine Constabulary, or the Philippine Air Force. With the commencement exercises having just stood, His Excellency President Ferdinand Marcos, together with the other officials of the military, descend from the stage here at the Convention Center in Baguio City and proceed to go out of the Convention Center. This has truly been a very memorable event for all of the graduates of this year, 1981 class of the Philippine Military Academy. Naturally, too, this is very memorable for the people who have been behind these graduates, supporting them all the way in the persons of their parents and their loved ones. Through the years that they have gone through rigorous training, I'm sure these parents have been very much a part of all the efforts that these graduates have exerted into finally realizing their goals, that of finishing the 4 years of training here at the Academy, and also of being able to fully serve the country by continuing to be true vanguards of security and national integrity. They more become now active partners in nation building. For and on behalf of the Maharlika Broadcasting System, Progress Television 4, and on behalf of my colleague Joe Sabrino, this is Dada Lorenzana thanking you for being with us, and have a pleasant afternoon ahead of you.
You have just seen the Philippine Military Academy graduation exercises, brought to you live from Baguio City by NBS Public Affairs.